Okay, so what I'm gonna try to explain is like how overfishing works. First of all, like one thing I need to talk about before we go into the more complicated stuff is like the basics, like of pretty much all like overfishing games are played in A till M, which is like has level max. This is the max difficulty. But there are some things that you need to know before we can start in this. Like like you need to know the basics of how HLM works, which let me get to the map for this. You probably already know, let me get something more easier, like spawning grounds, okay. You probably already know that like a lot of maps, they have these like spawn points. So at any point in the game, there's gonna be only one spawn point active. Like you're gonna have either like the other separated by color. So at any point in the game, you're gonna be only using one of these spawn points, which is where the bosses can come from. So this is the first thing you need to know. The second is that for HLM, you're gonna be looking at like the time that the bosses rotate between these points. Like it's like 10.3 seconds we're looking at. And in these like 10.3 seconds, you're gonna be dealing with like 3 bosses on average, which it's not always 3. Like sometimes it's 1, sometimes it's even 4, which is pretty crazy. But on average, you're looking at about 3 bosses per like 10 seconds. And already you can already see some of the things that like is very like present in overfishing, which is luring. As you can already see the problem. If you have like 10 seconds to deal with, you know, like 2 or 3 bosses, like let's say like you kill like I don't know some boss here, just getting these eggs like from the basket to here, like that in itself takes like I don't know like 4 seconds, maybe probably more actually. So if you're gonna be like have to deal with like 6 eggs or even more, like 9 in most cases, then 10 seconds is not enough, which is a problem. So this is why luring comes into play in overfishing, which is what I want to talk about. Because what we do with luring is instead of like killing the bosses like next to the spawn, we just take the bosses, kill them at basket instead. However, in order to lure bosses, we need to like understand like how do you lure them? Like because the way that every boss functions is different in its own. Because let me actually get the bosses here, like we have all of them. I'm gonna go into Moss first. Because Moss are by far the easiest one, but because for us to understand like how we need to lure them, we need to like know how they aggro players. Because like the way that the game decides like which player to aggro is different per each boss. Like the Maul is the most simplest one. The Maul is just like let's say you have a player here, you have a player here. Like they just go for the closest player. So if you have a Maul on you, it's pretty simple. You can just like go a basket and they will go straight to you. It's always like the straight path to the player, like the most linear line that you can get. So I'm not gonna be talking too much about Moss. Once we get into Scrappers, it gets a bit more complicated already. Because Scrapper is similar in Maw that it goes to the closest player, but it's not closest player based on positioning. It's closest player based on like pathing. So let me get. I think you can do this here as well. Yeah. So what you see right now is the pathing that each boss takes, and which path. Like obviously like the boss. Let me just get it out. Like a Scrapper cannot just go, I don't know, like just through this wall or something. Like it has to go to this particular path to go to the player. So for stuff like Scrapper aggro, instead of like being the closest player, it goes closest based on pathing, which is these lines you see. Like these are all the possible paths it can take. So like for example, let me actually go to Arpalas for this, because you can see this really well in Arpalas. There's a really common example for high tide. Like let's say you have like a Scrapper spawns right here, and you have someone here and someone here standing. Like you might, for Moss, they would definitely go for this player because they're the closest to this one. But for Scrapper, they would actually go aggro this player instead because they are the closest. So that's what you need to understand in terms of difference between direct pass and using the pathing from the maps itself. For Scrappers, it's not such a big deal because for Scrappers you have actually the thing. Yeah, like eels, exactly. Yeah, eels. This is actually a pretty like a big thing. Like if you have an eel, let me just get an eel out. If you have an, oh, you can move this. Like if you have an eel spawn like right here, it's very common for players to think that like if you're standing here, that you're targeted because you're the player closest to the eel, instead of like someone standing here. But with eels, it's not the, it's the same thing. Like eels, they do not target you based on like closest based on positioning, but closest based on pathing. So in this case, this player would be targeted instead of this player, because this player is closer due to the path it has to take. So yeah, it's exactly like eels. This is again, the reason why I'm talking about this because there are some more advanced stuff for which you need to know this, which I will be going into later. But yeah, eels is the exact same thing as Scrappers. Like they go closest to the player depending on the path that they need to take. So the player who is the closest based on the path it must take is who targets. For Scrapper is one thing to note actually. Scrappers, they will target a player continuously if they hit it. So if you shoot a Scrapper, they will actually start following you. And even if someone gets closer, they will not go for the person. They will just keep going for the same person that hit it until someone else hits it instead. But yeah, that's a like this understanding the pathing is a good thing to keep in mind because this is like knowing this is very like you can be very easily tracked if you aren't aware that pathing is what decides these kind of things. Hold on, my background music is not looping. There we go. Alright, there is actually a trick at which you can know which player is targeted for eels, because the driver, which sits in the back, like you have like eels are usually like this, like there's a driver in the back and here's the like the mouth or something like that. The driver actually looks at the player which is being targeted. So if you're unsure, you can actually use that as a way to also determining which player is targeted. There are some more specific ways of telling who's targeted, even on some maps, but this is a bit specific. Actually, I can show one example. But this is not something you should rely on, because it's a bit more precise. Actually, let me get Salmon route out of this. For example, if you go to the Lost Outpost, load type, please. This player, not a griller, eel. Okay. So, like let's say it's low tide. If you're, for example, an eel spawns here, and you're not sure who's targeted, because it is actually pretty difficult, because the positioning here can be very close. And like you can actually like check by jumping above the water. Because as you can see, like the eel, they actually go for you below the water. Again, if you turn on the node, you can see there's actually a path that goes down there. So some maps actually have ways of telling which player is targeted just by changing your positioning, which makes the eel turn around. But not all maps have this, so you should definitely be able to rely on understanding like which player is targeted based on when it spawns. Is Salmon run so important? I mean, depends. If you like Salmon run, then it is, but if you don't, then not. Like depends play, but yeah, that's basically eels. It's the moment they spawn, they target a player both based on pathing. And yeah, there are ways that you can check this, but it's usually easier to tell if you know when it spawns. Alright, so next are steelheads. Steelheads are a bit interesting. Steelheads are actually kind of similar to, like they move based on pathing, but the player they target is based on positioning actually. So, like for example, yeah, I can actually show this on Arc as well. Like Arc is really good with this. Because yeah, like again, steelheads they only target based on positioning. So they go for the player who is closest to them. However, the difference between steelheads is that they only attack if you're below their hitbox. So that's for example a common, like you know this already as well. For example, if you're on bay and it's like normal tide and like there's just some steelhead just sitting, I don't know, down here. And you're on top, like he's obviously not gonna attack you from down there because you're above the hitbox, and as long as you're above the hitbox, they're not gonna attack you. So this is actually something that can be used for lures as well, but I'm gonna go into that later. But that's the only difference that you need to know for steelheads. Also, it's actually important to know as well that the range of steelheads. I'm pretty sure you can actually see this in Salmon. Because there's you need to understand the range for the steelheads as well. Let me just normal tides. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, there we go. Okay, yeah, this is about the range that you can expect from a steelhead. As you can see, it has two like diameters, inner diameter and outer diameter. The one in the center is when it will start attacking. So if you're, let me give it this. Hello. Okay, thank you. So for example, if you're standing inside this circle, it will start attacking you. If you're outside this circle, but still in this one, it will follow you, but it will not attack until you're inside this one. But if you're unfamiliar with the range of the steelhead, you can use this app as well to like check what the exact range is, because it's actually very common for players to accidentally like stop steelheads too early, just based on positioning because they're too close to it. But this is kind of the range that you can expect from steelheads. I'm gonna be going to drizzlers as well, but drizzlers are, I would definitely say drizzlers are the most complex one for luring, which is for a few reasons. Biggest reason is that their range is insane. Like, the way that drizzlers work is once they spawn, they will start jumping until someone gets inside their range. Once you're inside the range, they will stop and they will like start shoot two torpedoes and then jump again. But like this is like almost easy to range. This is just so it requires insane awareness if you want to be able to like notice drizzle lures and like move away from them. But it is something you need to understand because it is something you need to like work on later. So how this works is that because if drizzlers do get stopped, what you can do is like still make sure to like watch how many torpedoes they've shot to like keep track of their and like know when they will jump again. But yeah, for drizzlers it's pretty straightforward. Like they have strict positioning on each map, and they will only stick to these spots and they will stop once a player like comes into their range. Alright, let's we have flyfish. Flyfish can actually be lured in a way. Because usually when people talk about bosses that cannot be lured, we're talking about stingers and flyfish, but flyfish can actually be lured to some extent. Because flyfish, they're similar to drizzlers in the fact that they have a specific set of positioning. So for example, let me go to Smoker here. Drizzler. I'm blind. Okay, yeah. Yeah, so here are, for example, the flyfish positioning. Let me get rid of this as well. So, for example, these 3 dots here, this is the positioning for one flyfish. This is another one, this is another one, and there's like a few more here. So the way the flyfish work is that they will start at a specific position. Like for example, on Smokeyard, they will start here. They'll fire once, and once they fire, they will go to the next one. And they will go to the next one. And they will like keep rotating through these positionings. So you can actually lure in a way flyfish because of this. For example, on Smokeyard, it's actually very common to instantly kill any flyfish who spawns here. Because this is by far the closest positioning you have to the basket in terms of the eggs. Polaris Hada is really good. Fun map. Yeah, but Polaris is really good for high scores in general. So, pretty good map. But yeah, so I would say that like luring flyfish, I'm saying luring, but you, technically you're not like moving them, but yeah, I would say like knowing these positioning, if it's not as important as luring like let's say moths and scrappers, but it is something you should definitely look into because it's a bit it will definitely make like a difference like the more advanced the matches become. Because for example, another common spot for like Smokeyard is like flyfish spawn here. And usually at the start of the wave, we kill flyfish in this position. But if we're like looking at, I don't know, 30 seconds left, and we have a lot of stuff with basket to deal with, we usually like let the flyfish come a bit closer to this one. And once it's here, we kill it, so that the eggs are a bit closer than this. And again, the reason why we're doing this is because you can, if you have to run 3 eggs from this position compared to 3 eggs from this position, like we're talking about like this is only, I don't know, let's say like 1 second difference. But like you have to travel that distance twice. Like you have to go forward and then backward. And you have to then do it 3 times for all the 3 eggs. So there's like a 6-second difference between where you kill the flyfish. So this kind of minor details will become important once you get further into games. On Ark Normal Tide, the flyfish spawn on the opposite side of the shore. You can lure the flyfish and soy basket. Yeah, there's a lot more spots like where this is important. Like there's quite a lot actually. Like same thing on low tide. On low tide as well. It's very common for like flyfish to spawn here, but you just wait for it to go here, and it's like a lot easier to get those eggs. What happened if multiple flyfish spawn on the same area? I think there can be. Yeah, that's actually a good question. Like what happens if multiple flyfish spawn in the same area? This is actually can be very misleading. So let me go to grounds for this actually. So let's say you have grounds, and like the spawns are happening from here. So if we're in the spawns, the only possible way for spawns to happen is here, and the flyfish just spawned. And let's just say it stays alive. It's possible for another flyfish to spawn, but it obviously can't be here. Like this spot is already taken. So if that happens, another flyfish will actually spawn here, or here actually. I think it's just random which one it picks. Well, this can be misleading because this means that technically, yes, it can be possible for 2 spawn locations to happen at the same time. Because all of a sudden now you have spawns happening from this side and from this side, which it can be there's a way to tell, because if there's a flyfish and there's no lessers around it, then it means that the spawn is somewhere else. Because if there's a flyfish spawning like randomly somewhere else because a spot is already taken, then the lessers will still spawn from the same original spot. So that's actually a way of knowing which spawn is currently active. So if there's a flyfish here with lessers, like just all over the place, and there's another flyfish here with no lessers, then you know, okay, this area here is where the spawns are coming from. But yeah, this is something that can happen. Yeah, if the flyfish spot is taken, then it will go somewhere else. Some maps do have multiple like areas to spawn. like again on Smokeyard, like you have, like they started getting smarter this late into the game. Like you can flyfish can spawn here, they can spawn here, which is 2 spots already, and they can also be here and here, which is 2 spots too. But yeah, it's definitely possible for flyfish to spawn in, like to spawn while it's already occupied. Sometimes it even leads to very weird moments where there's like a flyfish flying across the map or something. Like sometimes they go from here to here, which shouldn't be possible, but they do. Because again, yeah, there wants to be a flyfish here, but they can't because it's already taken. So the game actually like fixes itself sometimes on this. But yeah, flyfish can be linked, so that's definitely something to keep in mind. Now again, the question is, why do we need to know? Why do we need to know how aggro works for these bosses? Because like you might think that like all we do is just like we just take the bosses from here to our spawn and we just kill them here. That's it. But there's a few problems that come with this. For example, let's say you have we're going to grounds here, and I need a few bosses. Let's say you have like an eel and a stinger spawn. The best way to deal with this is like you let the eel go to basket, and 3 players like they go for the stinger eggs while the eel is taking the basket. But in order to do this, you must know which player is targeted by the eel. Now you could make the decision to just wait it out, just like let the eel come to basket and then take out the stinger. But again, we're dealing with like a 10-second window before like the next spawns are already happening. And if you look at how long it takes to just let the eel come, it's pretty long. So again, let me go to spawning grounds, low tide. I'm gonna get rid of these things. There you go. Like just getting an eel, like they spawn here. Getting an eel from spawn to basket takes like 12 seconds in itself. So you don't really have the time to like let bosses come to you if there's another reason for you to be here, like a stinger spawning, for example. So understanding how boss aggro works is something you need to know in order to like improve your ability to lure. Because if you know straight away, okay, this player is targeted, the rest of the players can just like go here and take a stinger down. Like that's perfect. Like that, you can definitely like deal with this in less than 10 seconds if you know that. So that's one of the reasons why we need to know how boss aggro works. So can you still determine lesser spawns if flyfish spawn somewhere else on fog? On fog, no. But the thing on fog is that on fog the spawns are completely random from the beginning. So, and I'll be going into this later. On fog, like usually you have spawn groups like these, but on fog the spawns are completely random. So instead of like bosses coming from like here for 10 seconds, on fog this does not happen. The bosses can literally come from any spawn point. Excuse me, from any from any like side of the map at any point. So for example, like you can in 10 seconds it's definitely possible for a boss to come from here, and here. Like in fog they are completely random. So, and the same goes for lessers. So it's definitely possible for flyfish to come from multiple sides and also have lessers. Like it's just straight up random. So that's the thing about fog. Like the fog is one of the few night waves which doesn't have like the spawn rotations happening. So that's one thing to keep in mind. But I'll be going to fog later as well. But yeah, again, the reason why we need to understand how these boss aggros work is we have limited time. Like we have 100 seconds and we have like 20 bosses to kill in that time. Which, in order to do this and run like 60x, like that's you need to understand how these boss aggros work so that you can optimize the time it takes to deal with scenarios like these. Because the thing that's with Salmon is that you need to like find that balance in luring and killing far bosses. Because you can decide to just stay at basket and not lure at all, and not get like far bosses. But then like the basket's gonna get overrun and you're gonna like run out of. And you're gonna get like less X overall. So this is why like understanding how boss aggro works is important. Alright. I'm gonna be going a bit more into the timer itself as well. Because there's a few more things that you need to consider when playing, which is due to the timer itself. So let's go to Bay. No load up, please. Because again, we gotta remember is that we have 100 seconds to get all the X. And the problem with lures and far bosses is that generally speaking, you have more lures than unlurable bosses. So like the only bosses that you can't lure are, you know, like stingers and flyfish. I want to get these picks up, but like all the other bosses, like you can lure them to basket, like Scrapper, Maw, like Steelhead, like all the other bosses you can lure to basket. So this forces a balance in like when you want to lure and when you want to kill bosses. So for example, especially on Bay, this is very present. Because let's say you have Steelhead. Thank you for not getting this done. I mean, to be fair, if you get 21 stingers in a shift, that's just unlucky. That's pretty horrible. But yeah, like here you can see the problem with, or at least like what you need to know about the timer, is that at some point you need to cut the line between when you want to go for far X and when you want to like keep luring. Because 21 things on fishing. Pretty much. Because they like some of these bosses, like they take forever to get to the basket. Like 21 seconds is really long. And the last spawn in the game happens at 28 seconds left. So if you still have bosses that need to go to the basket, and they take 30 seconds to do so, then going for, let's say, a stinger right here is not an option. Because if you're going for a stinger, it's gonna like stop the steelhead. And again, the reason that why we need to even consider this is the fact that at the end of the game, you're generally speaking gonna be having more bosses that you can lure compared to bosses that you can't lure. So like usually you're gonna have like one steelhead here, a scrapper here, I don't know, maw coming from here, or just lure two. And I know a lot of stuff. Let's say there's a sting here as well. Let me just do the better. Like these are all lures. And here's a stinger, and here's a flyfish. Probably not lure here. And the problem here is that, like this is like 6 bosses. This color is horrible. Hold on, let me just get something else. Like this is like 6 bosses that you can get to basket, and far bosses, like you're usually only gonna have like 1 or 2, unless you're very unlucky. You're gonna only have like 1 or 2 bosses that are present at the end of the wave. So once you come down to like 28 seconds left, then making the decision to stop going for far X and getting lures in becomes important. So this is why the timer as a whole, like it needs to be something that should determine your decision throughout the entire wave. Because for the same reason, if you still have like if you're at 90 seconds and there's, I don't know, a stinger right here, you should definitely go for it. Like you have plenty of time. to go for the stinger, and even if there's, you know, a steelhead here and it gets stalled, that's fine. Like this guy, you still have like 90 seconds to go, and by the time that you're back to basket, like there's plenty of time for this dude to come over here. So the timer is something to keep in mind as a whole when you're playing this mode. But this definitely like depends per map as well. Like on Marooners Bay, some of these spawn times, like they are really long. In some cases, you're just straight up unlucky, because if the last spawn is still that coming from here, then it's gonna take way too long. It's not even gonna reach the basket. So in some cases, you're just unlucky. But yeah, it's something to keep in mind when you're playing. That's the timer is something that should decide your actions. Alright, 1 second. And I'm gonna go a bit more into spawn rotations as well. I may go a bit more simple. Let's just take spawning grounds. Spawning grounds is pretty simple. Okay, again. So how spawns work again is like you have multiple sides where they can come from, and every 10.3 seconds, like these spawns can rotate. I should specify they can rotate. It's possible for spawns to remain the same. So you can, for example, have spawns coming from this side, and 10 seconds later they're coming from this side again. That's definitely an option. There is some specific maps and locations where they do not repeat, but it's only very few. So, like for example, there's one spawn on Smoke Yard where they do not repeat. But generally speaking, every 10.3 seconds, these spawns can rotate, and that's something to keep in mind. However, that's kind of a problem. Let me just get this out. Because, let's be honest, 10.3 seconds, it's really fast. Because the thing with Salmon is, like, there's always a reason for you to be doing something. Like, in 10.3 seconds, like, there's 2 bosses spawning. And usually 10 seconds is not even enough to kill these bosses or lure them to basket and get the X. So usually, like, the map is more often gonna look like, I don't know, boss here, boss here, boss here, boss here. Like, there's gonna be stuff everywhere, especially, like, maybe not in the first 10 seconds, but as the raid progresses, like, there's gonna be stuff everywhere. And that's the problem with this time, is it makes awareness very tricky on Salmon Run. I would say awareness as a whole is one of the, like, definitely the more, like, difficult parts of Salmon Run. Because there's so much stuff going on, there's always something for you to be doing. And this is why it's so important to keep a note of this timer. Because the thing is, depending on which bosses spawn, determines your action. So if you're unable to notice which boss has spawned, then it can definitely slow down your progress. Like, for example, let's say you're a basket here, and in the meantime, like, a stinger has spawned here. The longer you take to notice this, the slower it it makes your ability to get all these action and deal with them. It's even worse if, for example, you have like 2 stingers spawning from here, and you're dealing with some eggs on basket and not noticing this. If this happens, you probably want to like raid these 2 stingers. But if you notice it too late, it's probably going to be really difficult to raid these at all, because you're going to be like getting stingrays from like 2 angles. And well, meanwhile, there's already like probably stuff happening in basket too. So the awareness is definitely a tricky thing, which I can imagine some people might struggle with. If you do feel like this timer is something you struggle with keeping up with, what I would recommend is taking this into freelance. For quite a few reasons, actually, because the thing with freelance is, first of all, the timer is a lot slower. In freelance, you're usually dealing with 14 seconds instead. You might get high quota in freelance, but it's pretty rare, let's be honest, unless you're in Japan. So first of all, you're dealing with lots slower spawn rotations and less bosses in general. So it gives you more room to just focus on like noticing these spawn rotations happening, and like less like you've to spend less time on actually just like passing the wave and like surviving. So that's one reason why freelance could be pretty good for this. And second is that you're gonna be the only player that notices these. Like unless you have some very experienced players in your freelance lobby, which would be pretty lucky, they probably won't notice that. Oh, a new spawn just like came here, for example. They're not gonna see these things. So it's completely on you to like notice that where the spawns are coming from each map at any time. So if you do feel that keeping up with the spawn time is something you struggle with in overfishing, I'll definitely say like try and like take this into freelance, because again it's a much slower spawn rotation and much like more time to deal with. Like it might not sound like 4 seconds it's a lot, but if you're dealing with like 20 bosses, it becomes very noticeable. In that this amount of time is pretty massive. So yeah, definitely take this in freelance if this is something you struggle with, because I gotta admit, this is one of the more complex parts of Salmon. Because again, like the reason why we gotta know where bosses are coming from at any point in the game is like it's because like the boss that spawns decides our action. Like if it's a stinger spawning here, then okay, we go here and kill the stinger. If it's a drizzler coming from here, then we need to like back off and like make the drizzler jump to basket here. Like again, like which boss to spawn can completely decide which like direction you take. So this is why you need to be able to notice when rotations happen and like which bosses spawn. You can also just like ignore the timer and just look around the map every single second, but like there's no way you're gonna keep up with that. Like that's just straight up impossible. Especially like later into the game where you're gonna be dealing with like 10 bosses on the basket here. So if you're able to know at like okay, like 28 seconds, like there's gonna be another boss coming, then it's a lot easier to just look around for 1 second to see where it's coming from, and then for the next 10 seconds just focus on something. Well, this is excuse me, today will be the last spawn, so there's not gonna be anything else coming, but yeah, this is something definitely to keep in mind. Hello, Ghost. But yeah, that's mostly normal waves. So again, quite a few stuff. But yeah, normal waves, just keep in mind, you need to know how all of these bosses aggro. Not the jump. The jump is not a boss. Like you need to know how all these bosses like aggro you. Like if you know how the boss aggroes you, then you can much more easily take these bosses to basket and much faster. And again, keep in mind as well that the timer decides your action as well. Hello, Cass. I mean, if you're interested in playing Summer Run now, that would be great. Okay. I'm gonna go into some of the night waves now. Admittedly, some of them are a bit easier to understand, because I would say that normal waves are definitely the most complex. Due to just how many like variables there are. Like night waves is just more one variable, so it's a lot more simple. I kind of already talked about this, but first I want to go into fog. Like fog it's very similar to normal waves in that like you're dealing with all the normal bosses like flyfish, twistlers, cappers, everything, and goldies. And the main difference to keep in mind for fog is that the spawns are random. So again, while usually spawns happen for 10 seconds at any of these sections and then they change, on fog they are completely random. So like at any point in the game there could be a boss coming from any direction. So if a boss just spawned here, like the next boss might as well just spawn here or here. Like it's completely random. Same thing goes for the lesser. So like lessers, usually lessers come with the bosses themselves, but lessers, because they are random, like there could be a boss here and a lesser coming from here. Like this is completely random. This does make far egg running easier. Because for example, let's say you have a stinger here. On normal waves, there will be a bunch of like lessers blocking this. But on fog, because spawns are random, these are gonna be much more evenly like distributed across the entire map. So going for far X on fog is a lot easier in general. So that's something that can help in terms of running these far X. One thing to note, however, is that for goldies, these things are incredibly slow. Like let me go to Salmon around here. Like you saw earlier how it took like 30 seconds for a steelhead to come from this side. Goldies are even worse. These things take 38 seconds, 39. Which is, it kind of sucks. Gotta be honest here. So that's one thing you need to keep in mind for fog, that goldies are really slow and luring them away from basket like must be avoided as much as you can. Because again, some of these spawns like they happen pretty late, like at 40 seconds left or something. If there's a goldie coming from here, well, no, let's make it even worse, like come from here. It takes almost 40 seconds to just get to the basket at all. So if the goldie is lured away, for example, you're here, you're standing right here, and like the goldie follows you for a second, like that's already enough to like slow it down so that it cannot reach the basket. And the thing with goldies is also like they can drop 10x, so they must be as close to the basket as you possibly can. Because sometimes with other bosses you can kinda kill them here or here if you have time. But with goldies is they spawn 10x. If you need to run 10x from here to here, that's gonna slow you down a lot. So they must be killed at basket at all times. So, and because they are very slow, like the slowest boss that you have in the entire game, you must absolutely avoid like luring them away from basket as much as you can. So especially in fog as well, you should be expected to probably use a few more specials for far spawns if they are happening. So if you're like late into the wave and there's a stinger here, you should definitely probably use Raiders. But apart from that, fog is it's very similar to normal waves. The only difference in being that the spawns are random. So hello, Miniray. I'm gonna go into cohort charts now. Cohort charts it's interesting. It's map dependent, so I'm gonna go through this map by map. But like in a way you can kind of compare this to normal waves. Because the only difference on cohort charts is that again the spawns still are like normal waves, like they can come from either side and they change every 10 seconds. But now like there's like a bunch of cohorts and you have cannons available to you. But the positioning, let's not do that. The positioning of these cannons is it really decides how you play the map. For example, on grounds, this cannon is never used. I kind of wish they positioned this cannon, you know, a little more. I'm messing this up. I wish they positioned this one a little bit closer. Because the problem with this cannon is stingers that like spawn over here. You cannot reach these. The cannon actually has limited range, and this distance is too far for the cannon to reach. So on grounds, this cannon is never used because of this. So we're looking at these two cannons here, and because of this, the grounds cohort charge is actually a bit complicated. Because on most maps, like the cannon is in the same position from basket, but because this cannon is kind of useless, you have to use these two, and these two are really close to basket, which makes it a bit more difficult. Because all of a sudden is like you're really close to all of these spawns, and if a drizzler is, for example, spawning here, you're very likely to stop these kind of lures. For example, if we go to Salmon, grounds, low tide. Like if a drizzler spawns here, like you can see, like you're straight up gonna stop the drizzler, and noticing this is very difficult as well because of that. So the most difficult part about grounds cohort charge is like you're gonna have to learn to rotate between these two cannons. Usually I would recommend starting out on the right one, because with the right one you're only blocking this spawn, and these two spawns are pretty safe. But you should definitely be prepared to like rotate depending on which spawns are coming through. Because yeah, again, the cohort charge on this map is pretty tricky due to the fact that this one is useless, which means you have to use these two, and these two are very close to the basket. Marooners Bay cannons. Do you kill the steelhead early on top of cannon, or what do you mean by early, M? Let me actually go to Marooners Bay. Actually, but I think I know what you mean. Because yeah, on Marooners Bay, actually we can go into this map as well, because I'm pretty much done with. Yeah, again, yeah, the top cannon on Marooners Bay has a bad angle. Yeah, that's true. Like the thing with Marooners Bay is that like this is really high above ground. Actually, even that floor. Here you go. So yeah, it's definitely gonna happen that there's gonna be a steelhead here, for example, and you cannot hit it. I would say usually killing around here, or even here, is already fine, so that you can still reach it. But the team should definitely be prepared that there are gonna be bosses here that the cannon cannot reach. Also, I should mention there's actually a trick on Marooners Bay that allows you to shoot lower. If you enter the cannon and you shoot immediately, it actually makes you shoot lower than you are able to. For example, I think you can shoot about here if you like shoot instantly instead of like here. It's pretty bad like throwing, but I think you know what I mean. So on Marooners Bay, there's actually a clip of this in the fundamentals, I think, as well. If you go into the cannon and you shoot straight away, it makes you shoot like much slower. But yeah, Marooners Bay. So yeah, again, like this cannon is used. This is like spawning grounds, except you can now actually reach everything. So like all the spawns here, here, and here, like these are pretty easily in range for each cannon. So this is on Marooners Bay. You're only going to be looking at using this cannon most of the game. Like there's going to be one guy up here the entire wave, pretty much, until all bosses are killed. So Marooners Bay is pretty straightforward. The only difficult thing is indeed, yeah, like you mentioned, that it's really high up, so some bosses might not be in your reach. Even with the trick, it could be still tricky sometimes. So, but yeah, besides that, Marooners Bay is pretty simple. So let's go to Lost Outpost. Lost Outpost, it's also pretty simple, but there are some things to keep in mind for this one. On Lost Outpost, it's you generally take the right cannon first, which is for same reason as the spawning grounds cannon. Is that with the right cannon, you're only potentially blocking spawns coming from this area. Like this area and this area, you're not blocking them by being in this cannon. If you're in this cannon, then all of a sudden you're like preventing spawns coming from this side and this side, which like you're now blocking 2 spawns instead of 1. So usually the right spawn or right cannon is preferred on this map. But you should definitely keep in mind that you can still stall bosses by being in this cannon. For example, there's a Drizzler spot like on this map that you need to be aware of. So let's go to like Salmon. Outpost. Here you go. Yeah, so this Drizzler, this will get within your range. So if you notice that a Drizzler is coming from here and is jumping here, then you need to leave the cannon to lure this Drizzler to basket. It's very similar to grounds, except now you actually have time to react to this. Like instead of like the Drizzler being instantly in your range, like it actually needs to jump once to get that. Because if it's here, then you're fine. Like this is like you're here, and then it only stops here. Like you're good. So you have some time to react to this. But but once it comes here, you actually need to start leaving the cannon. But again, on Lost Outpost is pretty good for cannons, because there are only a very specific amount of spawns for which you need to leave the cannon. Like the only reason for you to leave the cannon is if there's a Drizzler here, or if there's, you know, like a Steelhead coming from here as well. But even Steelheads, it's pretty easy to like make them go this way instead of this way. So it's a lot less to be concerned about compared to let's say grounds. So again, the Lost Outpost it's pretty simple. Again, the most difficult one is by far spawning grounds, I would say, due to the fact that the last cannon is just absolutely useless. Alright. I can remove this dead man now. Alright, next is... Actually, let me take a screenshot, that might be making more sense for people. For Salmon Smokeyard, it's also the right cannon that I would recommend to start with. On a lot of maps, it's actually the right cannon, like the left cannon is always just... To be fair, like both cannons are not that bad on this map, but this one has few advantages. It's mainly like for flyfish. If you want to like kill all flyfish, you can generally do that with this cannon. The only thing that this cannon cannot kill is the far left stinger on this map. Like it can kill stinger here, it can kill the stinger here. These are obviously fine as well. But the one on the all the way left, like this is too far for the cannon to reach. Well, that's the only thing that you cannot reach with this cannon. But it is something to be aware of, because the fact that you're in this cannon means that you're gonna be targeted by the stinger as well. Because again, the stinger targets the furthest player. So if you're in this cannon and the stinger spawns here, you're gonna be targeted. So if this happens, preferably you want someone from the team who's in mid to just take one shot in this cannon, take it out, and go back. But if they do not notice it, then you might have to like rotate for a second and go to this cannon and then take out the stinger on this side. But yeah, apart from that, you can pretty much stay in this cannon the entire game. Like this is the only stinger. This is the only enemy at this specific position that can stop you from doing that. Yeah, fast. There are some very precise cannon shots on this map actually. Like for example, the flyfish here. Like it might seem like it's blocked by this thing here, but you can actually just barely like hit both of the baskets from this cannon. I think we put a clip. Might it be in the fundamentals or in advanced where we show this? But you can just barely like clutch this angle with this cannon. Someone in the web showed this too. Yeah, I mean, I gotta say, some of these spawns or locations are so weird. Like on ground, particularly, like, man, they could have just put this like slightly further. And like, let's say if the cannon was, I don't know, right here, like, but this would be perfect. Like, you could just shoot everything, and there's like no, you're not stopping any lures. You can kill everything, and everything's chill. But I mean, to be fair, this does make the spawning grounds a lot more interesting. Like, it forces you to be a lot more aware of spawns and rotate between cannons, which is. But then, it's kind of funny how, yeah, you're here and they're like, oh, screw this boss here, you cannot reach it. Good luck. It's kind of weird, yeah. It's. The biggest rap was someone said eels can materialize in the bellies. You mean in general or in cannons? But in cannons it's a bit easy to deal, but yeah, eels covering the basket is something to be careful with. Especially on... Actually, I can talk about for this a bit. Because eel pathing is kind of a big thing to keep in mind, but it's pretty advanced, but I can definitely talk about it for a second. Let me get rid of these. For example, especially on Marooners Bay, it's very easy for the basket to get overrun by eels, because like you have so little space here. In top play, what we actually do a lot is we purposely. So let's say an eel's coming from this side. I'm not in the water, please, thank you. It's common to just like usually eels will just go straight to basket like this. But what we do is we purposely stand like this. Or if it's coming from the other side, we stand like this. And we do this on purpose so that it's a lot easier to like keep control of the basket. Like if the eel goes like this, like if the eel goes like this, then the driver will be exposed here, and you can just kill it like this. And in general, it gives a lot more room. Like instead of covering the basket like this, it's just going like this, which is a lot easier to deal with. But yeah, it's worth it. Yeah, eels can definitely be a struggle on some maps if there's a lot of them. So it's something to keep in mind. Like same thing on Lost Outpost. It's we do the same on low tide. So let's get another eel. Like eels that come from mid, we all usually make it go like this. So instead of the eel going like this, where it blocks, you know, like this entire section, or you just block this entire section, I can just make it go around the basket like this. Which again, it's a lot easier to deal with. Like it covers a lot less of the basket, and it's easy to kill the driver like this. So I mean, yeah. So yeah, like eels can be annoying. It's but this is definitely a bit more like advanced. If you notice this, and definitely go for it. But it's definitely one of the less important things that I would focus on first. Like if you're new to overfishing, I would recommend like it's more important to focus on just getting the lures in, killing the basket, and getting all the eggs. And once you get more comfortable on that, like doing this kind of stuff can be an option. Okay. I have one more core charge map, which is actually the most fun one. Because Rumors of Arc Polaris, it's really interesting on core charge. It's a lot different than the other maps. Let me go here actually. On Arc Polaris, we actually use one standard cannon and one kind of flex player, which takes either this or this cannon. The reason that we use 2 cannons here is there's actually a lot of chances for snatcher optimization on this map. Snatcher optimization. Oh, that sucks. This word is so annoying. But what this implies is that we're using the snatchers to actually take the X closer to basket. For example, on this map, it's common for snatchers to just like grab X here, and they go into the water. And if you kill them in the water here, these X will actually teleport here back onto the basket. So this is what snatcher optimization is. Like, you're using the snatchers to your advantage to get the X closer to basket. And this is used a lot on cohort chart on this map. Because the fact is that there's a lot of snatchers that do this. So I can actually show this, I think. If we go to, like, if you get, there's X here. Yeah, here you go. So if there's X here, the snatcher will like come in, get these X, and then go back into the water. And because of the cannon, like the blast radius is so big from this thing that you can just shoot the water and it will still kill the snatcher. And if you kill here, the X will just like go back on here. And there's a lot of spots where they do this. Like if you go a bit lower, like again they go into the water here as well, here as well. Like here, even it shows that it only goes up to here on the snatcher. But I think they actually go all the way until here. Like they come really close to the basket. So there's almost every side on the map you can do this, which is it massively like speeds up the process of getting X. Because instead of like having people like take an inkwell, get some egg here, and then take another inkwell and go back. Like this takes a lot of time. So instead of like getting people to do this, you can just like almost all stay a basket. And once eggs start spawning here, you can just, while this one guy is already using the cannon as normal, you can just have a second guy take either this cannon or this cannon, depending on where the eggs are, and just do the snatcher optimization as they are coming in. And the amount of possibilities on this map makes this like a very valid strategy. Like we actually avoided talking about snatcher optimization as a whole in the fundamentals, because it's a pretty on most maps it saves like seconds, but it's not that much usually. But on this map it's such a big deal that we actually decided to talk about this. Because again, like on here as well, they can happen on the same side as here. There are some spots where they take it back the other way, like in this water instead. But there's a lot of cases where they just like go here instead, and here you can kill them with snatcher optimization. If you want to see some examples, there are actually some examples of this in the fundamentals document with videos where it shows people doing this. But yeah, the runes of Arpalavis is the only map that's different, really. Well, different. It's still pretty similar, but it's definitely a strategy that kind of changes the mode as a whole. But yeah, that's cohort charts, like how that works. It's pretty map dependent, but it's overall not that bad. Okay, spawning grounds is a bit difficult, but it does make it pretty interesting. Is one cannon needed for cohort charts? Usually. Yeah, again, like I mentioned, usually you take one cannon on each map, except for Arc Polaris, which is again, you might have missed it, but the reason that we take 2 cannons on Arc Polaris is due to snatchers who take the axe, they go into the water, and you can actually kill them here, and the axe will drop to basket. So usually we take 1 cannon, except for this map where, yeah, Arc needs. It's more like there's one dedicated user, and there's one flex, kind of like one person who just does the egg running, and as soon as like eggs start spawning on the sides, they will go into a cannon and do the snatch optimization. I gotta say, if you still need to learn how to do this trick, you can definitely just like stay in the cannon the entire wave and just focus on practicing these kind of shots. Because it's definitely a timing thing that you need to get used to. The timing is not that strict. Like you have a few seconds, about a second or something, that you have to like kill these snatchers and make them appear onto the basket. So it's not very strict, but it's definitely something that you need to get used to. So if you want to practice it, you can definitely just like stay in the cannon the entire wave, like 2 people, and just focus on practicing this. One watches the snatchers. Yeah, like the one cannon user is focusing on like killing everything, like just destroy everything on the base, kill stingers, whatever, flyfish, everything. And then the second user comes in, depending on if there's far eggs that can be like brought to basket using stance optimization. But yeah, that's core chart as a whole. I'm gonna go into rush. Actually, we have some rush maps. I might actually get one of them out. Here we go. So here's one rush map. We have maps for all of these, by the way. You can find it in maps. Oh, this is cooler. What is that? So there's quite a few things that happen in rush. First of all, the spawn rotations still apply. So every 10.3 seconds, there will be a spawn coming from either side. Like it's either like the blue one, the red one, or the green one. And after 10.3 seconds, they can rotate. So they will either stay the same or they will change to something else. On rush, this is actually something that you need to keep in mind as much as possible. Because on rush, the glow flags, they also change on this exact timer. So if you're, for example, running a far egg, or you want to go for a far egg and take it to basket, you need to know when the aggro changes. If you're doing this while the aggro changes, you're probably gonna die if you go for this far egg. So this timer is something that you need to like absolutely keep in mind when you're playing rush. But before I go into a bit further into that, like the way that rush works is, it's a bit technical, but like there's a limit to how many snatchers and how many enemies can be on the map. I think it's like 32, if I'm not mistaken. So at any point in the game, there can only be like 32 enemies. So for example, if you're just like staying on the wall, on the gates or something, or like hanging on a wall, and with like the rush enemies below you, like at some point they're gonna stop spawning because you've reached the limit of 32. This limit is something that must be absolutely avoided at all times in rush. Because the thing with this limit is, this limit will also avoid goldies from spawning, and you want goldies as much as you can. Because again, like the goldies, like they give you the X. Excuse me. So in rush, we actually, what usually happens on rush because of this is you have one user who is targeted. They have a specific position on the map, like here for example, which is like pretty safe and close to the basket. And in meantime, you have people clearing out chumps as they come. For example, if the spawns are coming from here, like they will go like this into the basket. And you want people to like clear these chumps as early as possible, while being safe, of course. Like you don't want to just stand here or something and just like kill them here, because if you're targeted, like they're gonna come for you here, which is pretty bad. And again, because like the reason that we want to kill these early is because if the limit of 32 is reached, then it will prevent goldies from spawning. Because to be a bit more precise, how it works is that every 20th spawn is a goalie. So you have one chum, another one, like 19 chums. And then the 20th spawn is a goalie. So, but if at any point in the game, the limit of 32 is reached, then this like counter will stop. So let's say you're like 5 spawns away from a goalie. Then this goalie will not spawn. I don't know how to draw a goalie. I'm just going to do this. Then this goalie will not spawn until this limit is removed again. And it's worth mentioning that snatches actually count to this limit as well. So on rush, you actually want to be running X as much as possible because of this. Because the thing with snatches is that if there's an X sitting on basket for like 5 seconds, like a snatcher is gonna come from here, and even if you grab this egg, if you grab it while it's still like here, for example, the snatcher is here, it's gonna be on the map for like the next 3 seconds, for example, until it goes away back into the water. So the longer you take on grabbing these eggs, the longer it allows snatchers to be present on the map. So you want to be grabbing eggs as quick as possible as well, because you want to again avoid the 32 limit of spawns to be stopping goalies from spawning. When is it a good time to walk link so your teammates collect eggs? What do you know? Am I saying this? Oh yeah, a good point. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna answer Ice's question first because it's a bit more simple. But yeah, the thing with that you need to keep in mind is that the timer of 10.3 seconds, this always applies. So even if, let's say you're targeted, like let's do simple. Like it's 100 seconds. The next rotation is like a 90, like 89 point whatever 7 seconds. Let's say like someone dies at 90 seconds. And they're targeted. Like if someone dies who's targeted, the target will go to someone else. But this timer always applies. So if you die like 1 second before the timer changes, it will not reset. So you're gonna be someone is gonna be targeted for 1 second, and then it will change again at the next interval. So something to keep in mind is that deaths will not. They don't help you in any way. They will not reset this counter. A spawn will happen. An aggro change will happen every 10 seconds, no matter what. Unless you're all dead, of course, but then the game just ends. So yeah, this is something to be careful of. So every 10 seconds, it's gonna change, no matter what. And on M's question, like, do you wall cling? Usually, wall clinging is not recommended at all. Like for rush, inkjet is actually a very common special. But again, let's assume that inkjet is not available either, because inkjet it's really good for just like if you target it, you can just use inkjet and just stay above the goldies and chums and just kill them all while the people are running X. But let's say you don't have inkjet. Generally, as a team, you want to focus on, like again, positioning is very important on rush. So, like one player stays safe the entire game, and people need to be killing chums and running X at the same time. So, like let's say spawns are coming from here. Like people need to be focusing on killing these chums, and at the same time running X back and forth while they're doing that. Because if it does happen that a lot of eggs start piling up on basket, then you can maybe consider wall climbing, but I would generally not recommend it, because the only reason I would recommend it is if it's very clear that we're not gonna get the eggs in time. We actually had in the VOD that I showed, actually I can maybe like the VOD that I showed at the beginning of the stream, there's actually at some point like Marty disconnects and we get high tide rush with 3 players. With 3 players, like we still passed away, but it becomes a lot harder with 3 players because all of a sudden like we were not able to like both kill all chums and X at the same time. So a lot of X actually started piling up, and I think actually one of us actually did cling on the wall for a second. But yeah, usually with 4 people, yeah, that was kind of painful. I think I did see during that, but oh, it's whatever. It's unlucky. But yeah, usually it's pretty doable to run X, kill chums, and protect the person targeted at the same time. Again, I recommend going through the maps. Actually, I'll show this. Like we have maps on all of these. Like just take a look at them and see like what the positioning is. Like let's go to like Marooners Bay. Marooners Bay is pretty simple actually, but whatever. Like we have maps on all of them. Like it kind of shows the general positioning that you want to take and where people should be to kill chums early. Like here's the person that stands, and these are the positions that people keep in mind to kill chums early. Also, it's worth mentioning that the people that do kill chums early need to keep this timer in mind as well as much as possible. Because the problem is, like, if you're here killing chums early, and all of a sudden you're targeted, then there's probably gonna be chums here as well, because they were running to basket. Like, there's a chance that you missed a few, or there might be a goldie even. So if you're too late, then you're gonna be so dead. If you're not aware that the spawn is chasing. So the people that kill chums early definitely need to keep this timer in mind. So, for example, what I usually do is, if there are chums, if there hasn't been a goldie coming at all, I stay here. So, like, if there's no goldie here, I stay here. If there's a, because if I get targeted in this case, I can just kill the chums that are ahead of me, and I know that there's nothing behind me, because I either killed the chums and there's no goldie. But if there's a goldie like that just came past me, and the timer is about to change, then I go back. Because I know that the goldie is gonna be after me if it doesn't get killed. Can you manipulate who gets aggro during rush? No. Well, yeah, you can beat that, I guess. but I'm not sure if that's really a good solution to not getting aggro. 1 second. So yeah, technically you can determine who gets aggro, but it's not gonna help you, really. So yeah, like again, this is another reason why you need to like keep this timer in your mind at all times. Can be scrubbed by going over from levels like this. Yeah, that too. Actually, I didn't mention this earlier, but I should have. Because the thing with eels. Let me go to summon it. You can actually, like, usually you cannot get rid of eel aggro, but you can, except for moving platforms. So, for example, the lifts on Smoke Yacht. If you go on the lift and you're targeted by an eel, they will stop targeting you and they'll actually go for someone else. But for rush, this is not possible. On rush, if you go on the moving platform, they do not care. They will just go for you. So. So yeah, like on rush, there's not much you can do about the like the aggro and like changing, like controlling it. So it really is a game of just like being aware of the timer and adjusting your positioning accordingly. But yeah, again, I highly recommend like looking into the maps that we have as well, if you're unsure about positioning on these kind of things. Alright, next is Grillers. Grillers is pretty fun, actually. Let me get the maps for Grillers too, because we have... There we go, yeah. Again, we have maps for a lot of things, so again, these are also from the map master post. Like if you go to grillers, like you can get these here. Like grillers. This is where I get these from. So clinging a wall for too long with griller, I will see this too. Yeah, man. But yeah, like chasing griller aggro is very uncommon, but yeah. So the thing with grillers is it's kind of like Rush, where it's positioning based. Except that grillers they amplify this like by a lot more. So on grillers we actually have we have these maps which showcase where you want the griller to be killed, which is in this green area, and this and like the path that you want them to take. Like you want them to take the shortest path as possible. Like you don't want them to go like this, whatever, or just like what the best way is. So I highly recommend looking into these maps, all of them. I'm actually gonna go. I can go through them. Why is this? Oh, it thinks that I'm drawing. Get out. Okay. Alright. But yeah, so I recommend to like take a look at all the maps. Like grounds is actually a bit unique in the fact that you can actually decide to kill grillers here as well. Because this is close enough to the basket, I would say, that you can kill them here too. But it's a tricky strategy, so it's something to be careful with. But by far the thing that you need to keep in mind the most for grillers is awareness, because with grillers, some of these spawns are insanely fast. Like, let's go to high tide here. For normal tide, this is not a big of an issue, but for grillers, why is it not going there? Hello. There we go. Like here, this is 2.8 seconds, which is insanely fast. Which so awareness is again another big thing on grillers that you need to be careful of. Because with grillers, it's very position based. Like the player who's targeted needs to absolutely, at all costs, like direct the griller the way it's intended to, while other players attack it. And yeah, in some cases you only have like 3 seconds to set it up. So while you're killing grillers and getting the X, you need to like constantly keep your like camera pointed to like where the spawns are coming from, because you need to be prepared to like react as soon as possible. If necessary, you can actually use the counter to your advantage, because grillers also follow this like 10-second timer rule of like spawns rotating. So for example, if the wave starts out and there's a like, let me get the other map because it shows a bit more better. So like, let's say like there's a griller coming from this spawn area. You know that your only grillers the grillers can only come from this side for like the next 10 seconds, because it's not gonna change until this timer is reached. And again, once 10 seconds are over, you can think about, okay, now the spawns are rotating, so potentially there could be coming a griller like from behind me or something. So if necessary, you can actually again like look at this counter and use it to advantage to know when grillers might come from different areas and like prevent getting ambushed. but on grillers it's a bit less necessary, I would say. Because if you have a good camera angle, you can generally react to that fast enough. But yeah, again, I would highly recommend to just look at all the maps and take a look at where you're supposed to like kill all the grillers. Yeah, will I post on YouTube? Maybe. I might actually. I'm gonna take a look into it later. But yeah, most of these maps it's pretty straightforward where you need to kill them, but it's definitely something to keep in mind. I would also highly recommend to like use Salmon route to check this, because some of the paths are actually a bit deceiving. For example, if you go to Arpolaris, I can get rid of the notes. It's like common to like kill grillers here as well on normal tide. But if you're targeted, you actually need to be careful with this, because if you have a griller, like let's say coming from here, your positioning matters in this. So if there's X here and you're targeted, you cannot get these X, because you'll see if you go down here, the griller will actually change direction. And if you're just going up and down constantly to just get these X, then you'll just like the griller will just like keep going back and forward for like a while, and it will slow down the griller. So it doesn't happen on a lot of maps, but it is something to like be careful with, because on some of these maps there's some very sneaky like stuff like this where this happens. Arpolaris in particular is a good example, because like your entire view is obstructed by this like giant pyramid too. So like you cannot see this griller most of the time either. So most people don't even know that if you're like going up and down here that you're stalling grillers here. Like most people don't even know that, because you can't even see it. So it's a bit hard to notice actually. So if you want to check it out, I would recommend to just go into this Salmon routing and just check these. Because like another example here as well, on this side like this, they rotate here as well. Like there's quite a few more locations like these, and there's one on grunts too. Like a griller coming from this area. Like I showed how sometimes like you kill grillers here and you like get these X, but this rotation is also dangerous, because if you're doing this, again you see as well like the griller will just keep chasing direction depending on where you are. So there are some spots that you need to be aware of on grillers. But apart from that, grillers is mostly a matter of awareness and not being too focused on getting the X, and making sure that your camera is focused on where the spawns are coming from. Someone throws a bomb on the griller. Are they trying to stun or kill small fry? Usually small fry. That's actually a good thing that you mentioned it, because it's actually a good strategy. Usually when people throw bombs, it's at the very end of a griller kill. So if for example you have like let's say Junior, which is very like ink efficient, you generally have ink left to throw a bomb while you're killing a griller. So usually what you do then is like just before the griller kills, like you kind of have to just like estimate that based on the comp and how fast the grillers have been killed. But if you throw a bomb like just before the griller dies, it pretty much kills all the small fries instantly almost. So usually when people do that, it's to like to get rid of the small fries. Because yeah, again, like the DPS you have on the weapon itself is usually higher than throwing bombs. But it's a good strategy. So if you have an ink efficient weapon like Junior, Splash, or anything else that doesn't use a lot of ink, you can like try to like throw a bomb while still trying to kill a griller, which clears out the small fries really well. But yeah, a comps are a big thing on grillers too. In general, on rush and grillers, like comp is a very important thing to keep in mind. Like if you have one weapon that's gonna deal with small fries and only one, like I don't know, like you have like some bunch of like charters or something, like you have one blaster. I cannot type, and like for 3 charters, that would be pretty sick comp. Then like the blaster needs to be like absolutely going for all the small fries and clear them out. So comp is something to keep in mind as well for this, because it's we talk about it a bit more in the fundamental. So if you wanna look into it more, I would recommend reading it. But yeah, there's definitely some technique as well to killing the lessers. Alright, I'm gonna go into seeking. Seeking is pretty more straightforward. The thing with seeking is, again, for those unsure, like you just open the bed, you open gushers and you find the goldie. But seeking it's very much more like defined in what you need to do. So if you go into Salmon learn, like there's strategies for the best way of finding these goldies, because you can use the information that you get from these gushers. Like they can be either like low or high, and depending on which one they are, you can tell where the goldie is pretty fast. However, like because of that, there's no excuse for like not learning these strategies. So if you're not familiar with seeking strategies, you should definitely go into all the maps and make yourself familiar with these strategies. I'm gonna explain them myself too. But you want to be able to like be in a game. You open this. 1 second, you know already where the goldies is. Like your reaction needs to be instant, almost, in terms of like knowing where the goldies are. But just to show, if you want to know the strategies, you can just like select down here which ones you want. The common one on spawning grounds is fast. You have some more information as well if you like click on more. It's like radical but fast static, like open DNG first, blah blah blah. So how it works on grounds is that if you open D and G, the way that D and G are connected to the gushers gives you a lot of information. So with these 2 gushers, you can almost instantly know for sure where it is. So for example, let's say this one is low, this one is low, then the goldie's here. Actually, I can just use this right now. Okay, it's, let's say it's here. Like D is low, G is low, it's an I instantly. There's more. I keep pressing the wrong button. There's obviously more cases. Like the worst case scenario is by far if D is high and G is low, because then all of a sudden like you have, it's either in these 2, which is really far, which you don't want, which it's a very good habit to build to reviewing stats on the game. Yeah, like again, this map is really good for this as well, because you can just keep doing this. Like it keeps randomizing which ones it is. So you can just like constantly practice this. Why is it always the same? Alright, there you go. So I would highly recommend the losing Salmon learn to get familiar with this. You can also turn off like candidates so that it doesn't show like which ones it can be. So like D is high, D is low, so it's either this one or this one. Okay. Again, D low, G high, it's this one. So this is something that you want to know instantly. And this app is really good for practicing this. Cool. There's one more thing to keep in mind with seeking though. Is that the seeking paths is something that you need to be aware of. On this map, they kinda suck actually. In terms of seeking path, what I mean is that, like, let's say a Goldie is here. There's multiple paths it can take, and which path it takes, I think it's pretty sure it's random. So for example, it can go this way, like next to basket, or it can just like go this way and just ignore basket at all, which is not what you want. But because of this, you need to know which paths are available, because depending on which path it takes, you need to kill it in different locations. Because if it goes next to basket, like you can just kill the Goldie next to basket. But if it's not going here at all, and instead it goes down here, then instead you want to like kill it here and here. Like you can see this as well if you like take E. It shows all the possible paths. So again, like it can go to basket. It can go the other way. That's horrible, eh? There we go. Or it can just like go this way at all. So the paths it takes is something you need to like be aware of as well. The main thing by far is definitely just like understanding how to find the Goldie in the first place. But like knowing where it can go is also a bit more important. On some maps it's a bit easier, but on grounds it's something to be mindful of. Because on this map, a lot of these paths they're really bad. Because, for example, if it's coming from H, it's very common for it to just go this way. At which point you want to be killing the Goldie here already, because this is the closest that you are to basket. Or similarly, like if it's coming from I, let me just show it. Specify I. Like it can go straight into this basket, or it can just like keep going and go to H. But depending on if it goes to A or H, you want to kill it in different locations. So this is like the bathing of the Goldies is a big thing to keep in mind. Because let's go to the next map as well. For example, like let's go to Bay. On Bay it's very basic. Like there's only one strategy. It's like B and C. Like you open this one, and depending on which one it is, you yeah, you Bay. I mean, Bay is not that bad for seeking, but it's a difficult map, to be fair. Like Bay, like a lot of maps are pretty good actually. Like, is there any way to memorize where the Goldie is going, depending on where it's going? Yeah, there's actually something important about that. These guys and the most about the path of Goldie will take place in action. I think we did that in an advanced ABC. I think we decided that it's a bit too specific, so we took it in advanced. But we really did talk about it, yeah. But yeah, I mean, ABC kind of mentioned it already. Yeah, like that's the thing. For example, let's say the Goldie is here. Hold on, that's the one. Here. So this is the example we used in the document as well. So for fundamentals, yeah, no, it's a bit it's good to notice, but it's only used in a few specific cases, to be fair. Like yeah, for example, this case where the Goldie can either go into this gusher or this gusher. But depending on which one it goes in, you want to kill it again in different locations. Like if it goes in D, like you want to kill the Goldie around here. Like you want to kill it as close to basket. But if it goes to A, you don't want to kill it here. Like you want to kill it here instead. So now the question becomes like, how do you know where each one it takes? The Goldie actually looks with its head to the basket that it's going to, with the gusher. It's very tricky here because for example, let's say the Goldie is here. It will look into the direction of which basket it's going to. So this is, to be fair, this one is really difficult because it's a very small angle. But you can actually see when the Goldie is around here, if it will go into D or A, depending on which way the Goldie is looking. So it's definitely possible to tell where. Yeah, like the angle is it's really hard on this map. I gotta say, like the angle is so small that you need to see it like multiple times at least to get used to it, because seeing the difference between it going here and here it's really hard. There are some easier examples. For example, we can go to yard. Let's say the gold is here. Boom. Hold on. If you're facing it head on, it's pretty easy to see. Yeah, like that, you can definitely notice it. So, but yeah, it's something you need to get used to. But like this is, for example, a bit easier. Like here, the goldie can either go to E or C, or D, but we're not really caring for this. If the goldie is going to E, you can already see like around here that the goldie is looking straight into this basket. If the goldie is instead looking like this, for example, then you know, okay, the goldie is not going here. So then you can just wait until it comes around here and just kill here. So this map is a lot easier to use this. So like you can just, but it is something you need to be aware of, yeah. Because again, if it goes into E, you want to kill here, because this is the closest that it's gonna get to like the basket. But if it's instead going to C, then you don't want to kill here. Like you want to kill here instead. Like this is much more closer. Is Dynamo the best weapon seeking? Yeah, pretty much. I mean, Dynamo as a whole is kind of meh. Like, Dynamo is very specific. Like, it's very good at one thing, but everything else it kind of sucks. I mean, like, I'm pretty sure everyone already knows that like killing stingers with Dynamo is the worst nightmare. It does kill lasses pretty well, but even then, like something like Depples or Sploos, like the swing from Dynamo is so slow that like by the time that you finish the swing, like any good DPS weapon will have already killed the lasses by then. Like Dynamo only really becomes faster once it's like you have 4 cohorts or something in a line, perfectly standing next to each other. Then Dynamo is faster, but even like yeah, Dynamo is good on seeking, but apart from that, it's yeah. If you get a trash path, it's better to it's better like you know. I mean, to be fair, I think people kind of use both strategies a lot. Usually what Piccolo is talking about is like you have paths that are just horrible on this map. Oh boy. Like this one, it just completely ignores the basket. It just does not care. So the question is like, do you want to kill it? Usually I would recommend do try to kill it. Because you can still get quite a lot of eggs in if it's killed fast and like if it's killed fast and you run the eggs in the meantime. And for the same time, like if the next goldie is, I don't know, a basket or something, and it's a medium goldie instead of like a full goldie, like you're gonna lose eggs on that. So usually I would recommend to kill it, but it's something that people need to be aware of as well. Because if a goldie spawns here on D, and people don't notice it, then like killing it by yourself is pretty hard. So usually I would recommend killing it. But yeah, before we go into yard, I'm gonna go a bit more into bay because I haven't really talked about the strategies here. But yeah, again, you can find them here as well. But for bay, it's pretty simple. Like, you open B and C, and depending on which, like if they're high or low, again, you make your next decision. For example, if they're like high, or let's say like the goal is a basket. If both are high, then you open. It's gonna be either D and A, and then you do D first and A. Again, like the you can see the entire strategy on the map itself. I wish you could recon on maps. Yeah. If you could recon on these modes, it would be so good. But yeah, unfortunately it's not a thing. Maybe in Splatoon 3, but we'll see. But yeah, basically pretty simple. It's only one strategy and it's pretty straightforward. High tide is a bit different, but it's a lot more simple. For high tide, we go for H first, and we then if it's high, it's either we go F, we go D. If it's low, you know for sure it's A. Also, by the way, these lines are indicating like the which gushers are related to each other. So for example, if this one is high, then it means that it's neither F or D because these gushers are connected. This gusher is not connected to H, so if this one is low, then you know, okay, it's not here or here because these are connected and this one's not connected, so it must be here. So this is how these lines work on seeking. And also, yeah, and again, like the reason that we're going for H first and not A is because if we go for A first and it's not in A, then running X becomes a lot more difficult. Okay, outpost. Outpost is pain on seeking. I talked earlier about how you want to know, like you want to know which paths the goldies take to the basket. The thing on outpost is that most paths don't even go to the basket. They just ignore the basket at all. There's a few paths that go to the basket, but it's not a lot. But okay, again, the strategy that we use is it's a bit different than other maps. On outpost, we use a more. Like what we do is we open G, D, and H. A, not H. Because like this is more like we're looking at 3 groups of like gushers. So what we do is we open all the far ones, and which one is high will tell us which one of these 3 groups it is. So if A is high, then we know it's one of these 3. If D is high, we know it's one of these 3. If D is high, then we know it's one of these 3. But yeah, on this map, you want to know the paths as well. But you should know that a lot of paths on outposts are pretty bad actually. So let's take goalie from A. This goalie can actually go to basket, but most of the time it won't. Like there's three gushes it can go to that don't lead to the basket. Like it will just like ignore it completely. And there's one path that will go to the basket. And again, like you need to check which way the goal is going. If it goes this way, you could have killed here. If it goes to the basket, you just wait for it to come to the basket and kill here. But yeah, on this map, there's a lot of these horrible paths where the goalie just straight up like ignores the basket. Like all of these top ones, they don't even go to the basket at all. Like D, F, and E, like they will just go to the side like this. Like even E, like it will just go sideways. And here again, like this is a bit even, but it's still, there's a lot of chance that it just won't go to the basket at all. So on outpost, it's pretty bad actually. What's the best compass map for fishing? Interesting question. I would say that it depends whether you're. If we're talking about consistency, I would say Smoke Yard is the best map. Because Smoke Yard is like, it doesn't really matter what type of mode or wave you get. You can get a really good score on almost any wave type on this map. But if we're thinking in terms of like the highest potential scores you can get, then Arc Polaris is better. Because Arc Polaris has that. Drillers on Arc Polaris, normal type drillers is really bad. Normal type works as well. Like you can get 50 at most on that. But on the other hand, like something like High Tide Seeking on Arc Polaris straight up broken. Like you can get on high tide seeking, you can get above 100x in a single wave. So it's so like Arc is really good for insanely high scores, but on average it's less consistent than Smoky Arc. In terms of comp, like what comps are the best? Like it's very like DPS based, because again, like you're gonna be killing stuff the entire wave. So like stuff like Depples, like Splooey, stuff like that's really good. If we're including Grisco weapons, Grisco Slosher is definitely the best. Grisco Slosher, it's very technical, but it's once you get used to it, it's game breaking. Like Grisco Slosher does not care about a Drizzler just sitting here, like not in a shield. Like Grisco Slosher will just straight up destroy it no matter what. Same with Flyfish. Like Flyfish, if it's not holding his basket open, like it just does not care. Like you just shoot through the thing, like it's dead. So like Grisco Slosher, like it straight up breaks the game. Grisco Chart is also pretty broken. It's like one of the highest DPS in the game. It's crazy. Alright, let me go. There's a few more seeking methods I need to go into. Next one is Yard. With Yard, what you usually do, you always open these two. Technically, you only need F for some of the cases to find the Goldie, but opening F and G kind of speeds it up. Because for example, if the Goldie is in E or C, like you only need to open F to know this. Like if F is low, then it's either in these three gushes. So then you open like E, and if E is like high, it's C. But the reason that we open G as well is if the Goldie is in A, then opening F and G is a really fast way of checking that. Because let me actually show this. Like if both are low, and let me show candidates, then there's only one gusher where it can be. So it's a really fast way of checking where the Goldie is by opening both F and G. And there's not really much like problems for opening these two, because these gushers are really far. So if the Goldie is in one of these, then you're probably fine by opening both of them still. So that's how Smoke Out mostly works. And again, you can see it here. Like if you can find the strategies. So like yeah, if F is high, if G is low, it's either one of these two, and then you just go from there. Alright. Now last one is Arc. I gotta say, Arc can be a bit disorientating to players, I think. So if you're unfamiliar which side is which, I think that there's a few like guidelines that can help you. I think something people will point out a lot is that like the boat is in this direction, like the boat is into, or low tide is in this direction. That's something that can help. But if you play this map enough, you can get used to it. But yeah, for Arc we use F and G, and it's the same thing on like across all maps. Like you use, once you open F and G, you can tell almost instantly where it is. But yeah, that's seeking as a whole pretty much. Like these seeking strategies, there's no excuse for not knowing these. You should know within a second where the Goldie is based on which gushes are opened. If you're not able to do that, I would highly recommend like using this app to practice this, because it's really easy to do like practice these kind of things here. And yeah, again, like on this map, it's not bad, but the past is something you need to be aware of. as well. Like, again, the path that the goalie takes decides where we want to kill the goalie. Like, you want to kill it here, you want to kill it here. So that's the main thing to keep in mind for seeking. Alright, that's most of it. Last thing to talk about is Mothership. Mothership is... It's a bit more simple, but there are some like in-depth stuff going on with Mothership. When I get done seeking, I can just give up. Oh yeah, if you're new to this game, then, or I mean, new to this mode, then it's very disorientating. Yeah, but you get used to it. Don't worry too much. The main thing to keep in mind with Mothership is, like I'm sure a lot of people are aware of the race strategy. Like the moment that the Mothership comes to basket, like you just use Ray when it's above the basket, and like all the extras drop here. Like that's the basic strategy. Well, there's a few more things to keep in mind for Mothership, which is that there's some more cheese potential, and the coolers are important to keep in mind. So, for example, on high tide, on a high tide, you actually do not kill coolers in this area, like at all. The reason for this is that, again, what we want on Mothership is for X to be as close as possible. And the shortest, like, X spawned around here, like on these kind of spots. And the X that are closest to basket are the ones that like spawn around here. This is a lot further. So a Mothership is actually good. You actually want to avoid like killing coolers that are really far. So especially on high tide, we do not kill any coolers here. We just let them sit, because as long as any cooler position is taken up, like there will not be another cooler there until it goes away. Which means that like more coolers are going to be spawning closer to basket. Like same thing for low tide, for example. The furthest location is by far this. Like this is pretty far from basket compared to here and here. So any coolers that spawn in this area, like you leave them there. And for all the others, you just run these eggs. It will mean that like lasers will start coming from this side, so you do need to like sometimes kill them, but overall you get more eggs from like running eggs that are closer and avoiding killing coolers that are further away. But there's some more cheese potential to keep in mind with this, because like the way Mothership works is that like the Mothership is around here, and like the coolers will fly to that location from the Mothership. But it is actually possible to kill snatchers like around here, for example. And if you do that, like the X will drop here instead. So this is what I mean with like the cheese potential that you have on some of these maps. Because let me go to a bit more easy example. Let's go to like Smokeyard, low tide. Like there's, for example, like coolers going like all the way here, like behind the basket. And what you can do is, if you have like a charter, for example, you can just kill these coolers as they're in the air, like around here. And they will just like drop next to basket. So that's one thing you need to keep in mind from Mothership. That's, on some of these maps, you actually have like cheese potential for this. And in those maps, it can actually be beneficial to run these eggs. To have like someone just like focusing on like killing these coolers first, and then the rest of the people are like just running eggs everywhere. Yeah, some more examples of this in the advanced document as well, I think. So if you're curious for this, you can find those there as well. But yeah, in terms of Mothership, that's most of the things to keep in mind, which is that's almost Salmon as a whole, I gotta say. So yeah, in short, like most important things to keep in mind is that for overfishing, you have spawn rotation. You have the bosses spawn on specific locations, and every 10.3 seconds, like they change between these. And you need to know how bosses target you to like optimize your ability to kill these bosses as fast as possible while running for eggs. But I gotta say, like, Salmon 1 it's a bit tricky, because one of the difficult parts about overfishing is that like, you should not underestimate how difficult HLM can be. Because one thing that Salmon 1 has is that, like, you need to play every single weapon in the game, pretty much. Like, in for example PvP, like, usually people just have like a few weapons that they play. Like, for example, I play like Explorer and like Bamboo or 5 and a few others, like Spruce. And that's mostly it. But in Salmon 1, like, you don't get to choose your weapon. Like, you have to play every single weapon in the game, which I gotta say, it's not easy. So it's gonna take a lot of time to like learn that. Like, I know a lot of people, for example, like, they dislike brush. Because, I mean, like, to be fair, like, it kind of kills your finger, let's be honest here. But in the end, like, you don't get to choose your weapon in this mode. So you need to be prepared that even if you get ink brush, that you need to, like, understand how to use the weapon to its best potential. Which is one of the more difficult parts about Salmon Run. So you need to be... Like, what you can do is that if there's a weapon you struggle with, you can definitely like take it into like recon mode. No, don't recon mode. I mean training room, and practice it. Like, for example, like landing your shots with Explo is pretty difficult because of the way it shoots. Like, it shoots like in like angles instead of just like straight. So you can practice that in training room, for example. But so I highly recommend like going to training room if there's weapons that you struggle with, especially if there's a rotation coming. Like, if you know, like, there's gonna be a rotation with, like I skip, like you hate H3, and there's a rotation coming with H3 in the next day. Like, again, like, you don't get to choose your weapon. You're gonna have to play this weapon, even if whether you like it or not. So what you can do is like go in training room and practice this to help it out. Brushes don't open, I can play. Yeah, I mean, yeah, brushes, like, yeah, it pushes the limits of a lot of people. It's but brush can be. It can be pretty good actually. Like, for example, on the grounds, it can be good on mothership as well. But yeah, so like it's definitely, if you're new to overfishing and like you want to learn these kind of things, like I would highly recommend like reading the fundamentals and practicing these kind of things. Because yeah, like the first few times that you do this like HLM might be a bit overwhelming. Like, there's gonna be a lot of games where like it just feels horrible and it's like the basket is just like a complete mess. Like, there are gonna be games like that, like, for sure. Because again, like, knowing how to play each weapon and knowing how to kill each boss with it is not easy. Like, you even have some specific cases like Rapid Pro. Like, killing a steelhead with that is very like, there's not much room for error to doing that. So like, knowing how to kill everything in Salmon Run is like not easy at all in some cases. So but there will be moments where it might feel like you're struggling a lot, but it's normal, because yeah, like, playing every single weapon in the game is not easy. And I mean, there's even like full question mark rotations where like you can choose to just not play certain rotations. But in the end, like, there's gonna be even rotations where there's like straight up random weapons, and some of these rotations are actually pretty good as well. So in moments like these, like, you don't want to be in a situation where you're like, I don't know, 140x in already, and it's like third wave, and you get ink brush, and you're like, oh shit, well, I guess we're gonna get, I don't know, 20x now. I mean, so it's something to be mindful of, because it's a difficult part about someone. So even in the good things is for Rapid Pro. I mean, Rapid Pro, it's meh. It's not the greatest. It's not the worst, but like something that decides whether weapon is good or bad as well is like also the weight. Like if you have a slow weapon like Eliter, like all of a sudden like getting an egg from here to here takes a lot longer when you're playing with Eliter compared to like a live weapon, which just does a lot faster. But yeah, so if you're new to overfishing, I would highly recommend to like get used to noticing spawns and understanding that, okay, depending on which boss spawn, we need to do this kind of action. Can you talk about specials effectively? I can do it now actually, because I thought about both stuff. Okay, specials is actually a good question, because using specials effectively in Summer Run is not easy. Because again, like in Summer Run, you're constantly doing stuff, so it's very easy to just forget about the fact that you have specials. So it's a good question. So one thing that will help a lot with specials is keeping the timer in mind, like on the top left, like how many seconds you have left. For example, if you're like, let's say you have like Inkjet. Like Inkjet is really good at taking down stingers. Like if there's just 2 stingers here and a fly fish, like this is really good to killing stingers. But the timer is a really good tool to know if Inkjet is good or not. Like let's say it's, oh my computer's tripping. Okay. Let's say you have, I don't know, 70 seconds left, and you see like a bunch of stinger and a fly fish spawn. Because you have 70 seconds left, I would not recommend using Inkjet and just like go there yourself and kill the stinger and fly fish. Because like when you have 70 seconds left, like there's plenty of time to like deal with these spawns and get the eggs. However, if instead you have, I don't know, like 30 seconds instead, then all of a sudden using Inkjet becomes a lot more favorable to use. So the timer is a really good tool to use to know if a special is good or not. Like there are some really bad examples as well. Like if you go to Bay, low tide, if there's a stinger spawning here, and there's like 40 seconds left even, this is so far away. I mean, you can go like this, but you did go back like this, or like the other. That if the timer is low, around 40 seconds, then using stinger to like kill this is a really good option. Especially if it's 1 stinger, you can maybe like survive. But if it's 2 stingers, like here and here, then stinger becomes really good to use. So like if whether you shouldn't or should use your special is like the timer is something that you really need to keep in mind for this. It makes a lot of these decisions a lot more easier to make. There are some more examples of when to use specials. For example, there's a diagram in the fundamentals which shows, let me get it up actually. Like it shows when bosses spawn. Here you go. So let me explain this diagram actually. You can ignore this. This is what we care about is this. I cannot draw a straight line. This is the info on HLM. Like again, as I mentioned, on HLM the spawns rotate every 10.3 seconds. And these numbers here indicate when bosses spawn. So in the first 10 seconds on the first wave, there's 2 bosses spawning. In the next 10 seconds, there comes another 2, then comes 3. And in the last 28 seconds, there's 1 more boss. What you'll notice is there's actually 1 moment in the last wave there where 8 bosses are spawning, which is insane. I'm gonna be honest, this is a lot of, like, you can have like 3 stingers and 3 fly fish coming in this time frame. So if it's the 3rd wave, What I would recommend is, like, if it's the third wave, you look at the top right if you have special. If you still have special, then you need to pay extra attention when this like timer comes. Because in this time frame, there's gonna be a lot of bosses that will be coming on the third wave. Like, there's gonna be 8 bosses. Like, this doesn't happen anywhere else. Like, there's only one moment where there's gonna be so many bosses in the game. And in this time frame, it's really good time to use Inkjet or Stingray if you haven't already used it. Or Bombers as well, but Bombers and Special are not as good as Stingray and Inkjet, let's be honest. So if you're unsure when to use Ray or Inkjet, this can be a really good example. Although I should mention, if you're unsure whether a special will be good or not, and you're hesitating, I would say go for it anyway. Because you're gonna learn more by doing it and get feedback from the game, like, did it help, did it not, than if you wouldn't do it. Like, if you don't use your special at all, you're not gonna learn anything. Like, if next time you come in the same 2 situations, you're gonna have the same dilemma of like, okay, should I use my special or not? But if you use it, then you'll actually like learn, okay, the fact that I used special here was actually good or not, based on how the game goes after that. So if you're unsure, I would say just go for it. Because there's also gonna be moments where like you just get really horrible spawns. Like, let's say you have like, I don't know, all of a sudden you have 3 stingers right here, which I know it happens sometimes. Even though if you have like, I don't know, still like 60 seconds left, like you have time to deal with that, but in some cases, like, you might just, it's probably good to just like ink that anyway, because again, this Salmon run is about time. Like, you want to use as little time as possible to like do everything, and 3 stingers is it's gonna take up a lot of time. So if you want to like use a rule of thumb, like if there's like multiple stingers and flyfish, you can like try and use special, especially if it's late, if it's like way too rushy. But it is only like a tricky part about Salmon run, because you never know what's coming next. Like, you might have Inkjet in wave 2, and then wave 3 is like Mothership, and you're like, oh, Inkjet's kind of useless here unless we don't have breaks. So. It's a difficult question because it's dependent on a lot of things, but above all, I would say if you're unsure, like, I would say like go for it, because you're gonna learn more by using it and then seeing how it goes than not using it. But yeah, like these factors, like the time and the spawns, is something you can keep in mind to help with that. But yeah, that's. I hope that answers specials to you. If there's any more questions, then I can definitely ask them still. I mean, basically, there have been so many moments where I like use Ray to kill, I don't know, like 3 flyfish or something, and then like another 3 flyfish just spawn somewhere else. I mean, sometimes you're just gonna be unlucky. Like that's something to keep in mind about Salmon run as well, is especially in terms of like if you're looking to improve your gameplay, like you wanna focus more on how the waves itself go and not the score. Like, you can have, I don't know, like 20 malls, and it's gonna be like easy 60x or something, like on a single wave. But if instead you have a wave of like a lot of stingers and a lot of flyfish, and you still get, I don't know, 50x, that's actually pretty impressive. So if you're new to overfishing and you're looking to like improve your gameplay, what you want to look at is not the final X score, but you want to look at the waves itself. Like the type of wave determines a lot, like what the final X score is, and that's not in your control. What you can control, however, is like the gameplay itself and how the waves go. So you want to look at stuff like, okay, this was really bad RNG, but we actually did pretty well. So that's the kind of stuff you want to look at, instead of like, okay, we had But instead, if for example you have really good spawns, and you only get, I don't know, 30x or something, then you might, that's actually a pretty bad wave. Like, you want to look into, okay, what went wrong here. So in general as a whole, if you're new to Salmon, I would recommend like focusing more on like the games itself and not the like stats. Because they're a much better way of like understanding like what's going on in these games and like what you can do to improve on them. Because like the final X score, it's so much decided by like the wave type you get. Like you can get, I don't know, high tide grillers, Sea King and high tide grillers, and you get like 20, 200x easily. But in the meantime, if you get, I don't know, like 190x with only day waves, I would say this is more impressive than 200x. So yeah, that's something to keep in mind if you're new to overfishing. That like this game is actually not the greatest balance, but sorry. When you kill 6 stingers with just 7 spawns, yeah. Yeah, it's feeling like some of these spawns are just. There's not much you can do about it. Like you can maybe make a reason that if you have stingers spawning, you could decide to like not kill the stingers to increase your chance of like better spawns coming. But the chance of like getting 7 stingers in a row is so low that it doesn't have that much fun. But it does happen, so if that does, then lucky. Also, if there's more questions, feel free to ask them. Like I've gone through most of the stuff that I wanted to talk about in terms of like Salmon itself. I might talk a bit more about normal waves because they're pretty complex, but I've gone through almost everything at this point. So if there's any questions, then feel free to go. I have to run 18 stingers. Wait a second. Yeah, it's. I posted a clip some time ago as well on Smoke God where there was like just 4 stingers coming from the exact same spot. But if you want to take a more like well-written, slower like explanation of how this all works, like, I highly recommend like reading the fundamentals. Actually, let me get the link to this. Here you go. Like this is the fundamentals, which explains a lot of things that I've gone through, but in like in a text way. But yeah, it explains it like more clearly if you're curious in the morning. We do another stream on more advanced threats, maybe. I gotta say my explanation on normal waves wasn't the greatest, but I think the rest was fine, so I might put this on YouTube, but I'll see. Because I gotta say, like sometimes I try to explain like 3 things at the same time, and then it kind of comes out as like gibberish or like random words, but I hope it still makes sense. So.